Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and another rendition of How the Did We Do This? Today we're going to dive into Justine Grove's song called Dance With You. It was written with Nick Sanza, but before we do that, please make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content. It really helps out the channel. But without further ado, let's dive in.
Can we dance? Can we dance to the rhythm of our heartbeats tonight?
So let's start off with the acoustic guitar because these were the chords that kind of inspired the rest of the session for Nick and Justine to dive into the lyrical and melodic writing. Here it is soloed real quick. So both of these guitars that are in this group are actually Native Instruments plucked acoustic guitar. Pretty straightforward on that. I think there was some processing that I did afterwards that I ended up freezing probably the RC20 to give it a little bit of movement. But on the whole group, we have Soothe going on that's ducking some of the higher pluckiness, resonance, and some of the slides as well. Let's see what that's doing. So it's just kind of taking a little bit of that attack away. It was kind of getting a bit piercing on the ears the more that I was listening to this. So as the acoustic guitar was looping in the room for Nick and Justine to work to, I pulled out Justine's acoustic guitar and just started doing some rhythmic taps on the body of the guitar and recorded that on my iPhone at the time. It is what starts off the entire song. So this is what the beginning sounds like. And it's filtered. You can see that there's a pretty heavy 24 decibel per octave filter on this. Let's take that off. You can hear what the original recording sounds like. So you can hear Nick is kind of diving into some of the lyrical content there. It's really like a nice special moment. After getting that recording down and edited real quick, I probably dove into the drums and the vibe and feel of it, which is kind of outlined with the kick and tom samples that are going on here, but built out more as the song progresses. I'll solo these two real quick. So the kick and tom are pretty simple, but as you add more layers to that, it gives it a lot more depth. So there's some other elements going on. You'll hear a snare drum that's doubling the tom, and there's some shakers. And later there's even some hi-hats that come in on the post-chorus that just help with the development of the piece overall. Here are the drums soloed. So let's dive into the plugins that are on the drum bus for this. I started with knock, giving it some extra punch, some saturation, a little bit of the high-end air, which was probably added later on as I was listening to everything. And then the clipper, which is hitting it pretty hard, but I love that I'm able to get these drums super present without really losing any headroom. The clipper actually makes the attack feel like it's hitting a bit harder. Here it is with it off, and then I'll turn it on. Here it is on. After adding the drums and the guitar, I dove into the bass, which was done on the Native Instruments Prime bass. You can see that the preset here is Funky Offbeat. It's got some slight changes that we can dive into on the bass settings and the amp and effects. Here it is soloed. So you can see that the DI signal, the drive, is pushed up pretty far, which I think is adding a nice warmth and body to it. If we dive into the amp and the effects, the supercharger is giving great compression so that the length of the note is staying present. It's not just dying off. And tape is also adding some more saturation on top of what the DI signal was already doing. Here it is without any of the amp and effects on. And again with them on. So you can hear that it's letting the pluck of the bass come through while also keeping that sustained super present. I think in the mix it almost feels a little bit like a saturated 808, but has more character of just being on that type of bass sound. Now that we've got the bass, guitar, and drums going, we add in some synths that outline the backbeat of everything. So why don't I play that all together right now? Super simple, some melody plucks, some kalimba style plucks that just add a little bit of lightness to the chorus since the verses are very bare. Then after the chorus, for the instrumental section, we dive into the post-chorus, which introduces this post-chorus melody. So the post-chorus melody is comprised of 3 different elements. The first one being the trumpet. That was done on the SWAM audio modeling VST, which is different than just an instrument sampling like Native Instruments brass ensemble. Next, we have the vocal chop, which was actually sung by Nick, and then we altered it using Little Altar Boy and Decapitator to change the formant and pitch, and we blended 2 different layers of that together. The last element that's mixed in there is actually a whistle, which I believe is Justine's grandpa who was whistling this, which I think just adds such a cool element to it. It's got a little bit of a vocal slap back and it's on a plate as well. I tried to make this feel more like a sample and less just like somebody being well recorded whistling. Here it is soloed. There's just a lot of character in that, and it also adds a nice sparkle that I don't think you focus on until you know it's there. Before we dive into the post-chorus, which kind of switches up the vibe, let's go into Justine's lead vocal.
Can we dance? Can we dance to the rhythm of our heartbeats tonight?
As you can see, Justine's vocal goes through a little bit of tuning, and there's a roll-off at 100. The room that we recorded in had this room rumble that was going on that was just getting in the way of everything, so there's a pretty hard cutoff on that. Then, after the auto-tune, we go into the Slate mix rack, which is done with the female pop preset with some changes just to fit Justine's vocal. Again, this is just something that was pulled up so that we could keep in the flow of creativity while still making sure everything sounds good and feels good to listen in the room. After the mix rack, we go into the saturator to give Justine's voice a little bit of grit, and then we have Soothe to follow that up to cut out some of the sibilants. Let's look at what all of this is doing.
Can we dance? Can we dance to the rhythm of our heartbeats tonight?
As you can see, her voice is hitting Soothe pretty hard, but I didn't mind. I don't think it's really taking that much away. Soothe has a really, really transparent sound to it, in my opinion, especially when you are exporting it 4 times on oversampling and then the resolution is at ultra. After that, we have a reverb that is engaged through automation a little bit later on in the record, but that's basically all we have going on for Justine's lead vocal. I think another really, really cool part in this song is the second pre-chorus where we have some really, really nice harmonies coming in. All of the instrumental actually drops out in the record, but I just want to solo this moment in general.
No fancy car, no big backyard. All we want is still so far. 'Cause I wanna be right where we.
This is really, really cool. All those harmonies are kind of floating around her lead vocal and creating these counter lines, which I think are super, super interesting. And then, as you heard for a split second, we have Justine's grandma coming in with Wepa, which I absolutely love. This is processed, again, to feel a little bit more like a sample. So we have the virtual mix rack, which is the old radio vocal, which I absolutely love. These filters on here just adds such a nice feel to it. And obviously, this opto is perfect for this type of sound. Then we're going into the Redux after that, which is doing a little bit of the bit crushing, and then we have a slap back on the vocal as well. I'm going to play this back without any of these plugins on so we can hear the original, and then turn them on so you can hear what the record sounds like. Wepa! Still a fantastic recording, but just to fit in this vibe, I think these elements really helped a whole bunch. Love that moment. I love just being able to use these live elements that really bring so much to this record overall. After that nice little pre-chorus break of the vocals, we actually introduced the brass for the first time, which is a blend of different VSTs. We have the Native Instruments brass ensemble, and then we again are using different SWAM instruments to give it that live feel. Here they are soloed. And I think this has been really eye-opening for me, is just blending different instruments, specifically for brass or strings, to get that live sound, because even if it's different sampled instruments, the way that they're sampled and the way that they interact helps with that live feel if you can't have live instruments on a track for a multitude of reasons. Maybe you can't find somebody, or maybe you just don't have the budget for it at the time. So here is the brass ensemble, which is from Native Instruments. So they sound good, but since it's sample bass, it sounds the exact same every single time you attack a note. That's why you bring in Swam, which feels a little bit more live and gives you more flexibility to play like an actual player would. Here are the Swam instruments soloed. So you can hear the vibrato and all of the movement in between the notes that a player would probably do. And as far as any of the plugins go, we have the RC20 running on this with a room afterwards and some EQ. Here's what they sound like without any of the processing. So still pretty good, but a little bit too present and punchy for what I was trying to go for when putting these in. I think that the RC20 takes off a little bit of that high end, and the Valhalla room puts it further back in the mix so that it's not competing with Justine's vocal. After the second chorus, we actually go into this outro breakdown section, which starts with this piano montuno. This was done on the Native Instruments Cuba instrument, I believe. It's printed, so I'd have to go back, but I hope that I'm right. Again, I don't always remember. And that's when we really get to hear the whistle on its own with the piano. This is how it starts. Then we add in a heartbeat to kind of take the place of any lower percussion like the kick. And then we have another sample that is of Nick, Justine, and I clapping in the room, which has a nice little swing to it. It's a little sloppy, but I think it adds the character that's necessary. And you can see on the clap, I'm really just trying to get the higher end attack, not really the body of the clap. I don't want it to take up too much space. But then when we mix it in with some higher percussion and the shakers, it really has this beautiful movement to it. As this outro is going, it's building up, it's adding more elements, playing the post-chorus melody, and we have this post-chorus crowd section, which is Justine, Nick, and I yelling in the room, multiple layers of it, having just like a nice time, not taking anything too seriously. Here it is soloed. Again, this was an attempt at making it feel more like a lo-fi sample as opposed to a really nice studio recording, and I think that is like the energy that it needed. We also add in the brass. And then finally, on the last time around, we have the full ensemble going, including the vocal chop and that original trumpet. Really love that ending. It's such a cool vibe. Justine was pushing for this to be kind of just a whole band playing, and I'm so happy that she did because it creates such a cool outro moment. So the final step is going into the mix bus before we bounce it out to send over to Nicholas at Panorama Mastering. You can see that we got the Ozone 10 going to the Dyne 1 with Goldfoss followed up, and then the God Particle is the final piece. But I believe I turned off the God Particle entirely before sending to Nicholas. Here's the Ozone 10 settings. You can see EQ is not doing much, adding a tiny bit of air. The stabilizer is working relatively hard, and Impact is not doing too much. I think it's probably making her voice pop a little bit along with the upper register of that kick drum. The Imager is super wide, but also taking the bass down, as you can see. Dynamic EQ is ducking some choice parts. This was probably done through the master assistant that pointed out these things, and I enjoyed what it did. The maximizer on this is just here for the soft clipping feature. I love what they added with this one in Ozone 10. This is on the medium setting with 25%. I can go through on all of these and you can see what it's doing as I play this outro. Pretty simple, but also adding just, I think, some liveliness to it. Then we're going into the Dyne 1, which is, again, a trick I learned from Nicholas at Panorama. And it's basically just bringing up that low-level information to give a little bit more punch and excitement without losing any headroom. And the second last thing is basically this Goldfoss that you can see right before the God Particle. Let's see what that is doing on this outro. It's really, really subtle, adding a little bit of high end, controlling some of the mids, but not doing a whole bunch overall. And the last piece of the puzzle is the God Particle, not doing 100% on the multiband, pulled back a little bit, but still feels really, really great. I just love the EQ curve that we have on this plugin. The limiter is on right now, but again, this wasn't even probably on when I sent it off to Nicholas in the first place. Yeah, I believe that's how the we did this song, and I hope you enjoyed this breakdown overall. Again, this song is called Dance With You by Justine Grove, and be on the lookout for all of her future releases over the next few months. Super solid stuff. But until the next time, I guess I'll see y'all later.